Hello, good evening. This is Professor Khan. This is week 10, and this week we will discuss cooling. Um Even though it says week 9, we are in week 10 because we lost a week due to uh, the midterm. So this week we will talk about the aspects of cooling and how do we do cooling load calculation. Probably you have noticed, or probably you thought about it when we did the heating load calculation and as part of your project, that the heat loss factor is not going to change for any of the walls, windows, floor, or ceiling. What would change and what would be the difference between heating and loading and heating and cooling load calculation? The first thing is the temperature difference. The temperature between the inside and outside in the winter is different than the temperature inside and outside in the summertime. That being said, in the summertime, you will gain heat instead of lose heat. And also, since we talked about lighting already, we have realized that appliances and light do add heat. So that's not a reason enough for us to consider those as a source of heat. But in the summertime, they will work against you. You're trying to cool the house and uh, eject or pump heat from the inside the house to the outside, and you have some equipment inside your house making heat. So those are the two differences, the temperature difference and also the appliances and lighting. With having a lot of LEDs now, it's not going to be a big deal to do the lighting because LEDs do not emit a lot of heat. Okay, let's start. So here, starting. So we will learn heating and cooling loads differences. We already talked about that. Two main differences is the delta T. I'll try to use the pen and see if it works. Delta T and also appliances. They do makes a difference. Define the concept of heat again. Again, heat is energy and the absence of heat is cold or coolness. So there is no such thing as cold. Cold is just the absence of heat. So heat is the something, and the absence of that something is coldness. We will talk about reflectivity and what does that mean to us and how does it help us when it comes to cooling. We'll explain the role of landscaping and cooling. That is very, very important concept and will give you a lot of idea on the importance of having landscape, grass, tree, shade of trees, and why is it important to care about vegetation in a city or around your house as well. We'll also explore the purpose of awning and how does it help in reducing cooling load. Uh, Probably we always think of awning as just shade, or maybe it's good looking, or maybe it looks really good for the decor. But if you notice in the Mediterranean region, a lot of countries they do count a lot on having awning for stores or for uh, windows because they do add a lot of uh, cooling factor. They intercept the sun rays from coming into the house. You get the light, but you didn't get all the sun heating rays into your house. And we'll talk about that as well. So cooling versus heating, they are very variable. Why is that? If you, for example, you can have two houses made the same way, and they usually, if they're made from the same material, they will require the same heating load. However, you can have two houses and they're made out of the same material, same walls, cookie cutters, for example, and one of them will require more cooling power than the other. Why is that? It has a lot to do with how does the sun hit that house. It depends a lot on the vegetation, the shade it receives, the orientation of the house as well. So it can differ. It can differ by a factor of 50 times. That is huge between two houses in the same location. 50 times more cooling load than the other one. That's lumber seems a little bit huge, but it is nevertheless true. Uh, the shade of tree is very important, and the shade of a tree is different from a shade of a wall or another building. And why is that? Is because trees do use latent heat to cool the air. Trees do something called evaporation, which is pulling water from the ground and evaporating that water from the leaves. And by doing so, they will cool the air more than just regular shade. Shade basically intercepts the sun heat and the sun rays. But sitting under the shade of a tree is much cooler than sitting in the shade of a wall. We'll talk also about nighttime ventilation. With nighttime ventilation, there's many ways that you can use free convection in the house to ventilate the air and change the air and cool the house, because once you stop the sun rays, once you stop the sun hitting the house, you will have different kind of ventilation and different temperature. And probably as soon as the sun sets, the temperature completely drops and you have a lot of cooling factor. And if your house is well ventilated, probably you do not need even to turn on the AC or a fan if you have the proper mean to ventilate the house. Within an hour of sunset, the house will cool down quickly. We talked last week about solar heat gain coefficient, and we said that it's a big factor when it comes to cooling because you do receive a lot of solar heat coming through your window. And we talked about the solar rays. There is ultraviolet, there's infrared, and there's the visible light. You want the maximum visible light coming into your windows, but you want to block the infrared. The infrared are the solar rays that will cause you to have raising temperature. And finally, we'll talk about humidity. Humidity is a big factor when it comes to cooling. And again, that goes back to sensible and latent heat. And I try to explain to you that in a humid house, you will not be able to increase the temperature inside the house, the sensible heat, until you pull the humidity to above the dew point. So first, the AC will try to pull all the humidity out of the air until you reach the dew point. The dew point is the temperature based on the pressure at that day, where you start to condensate water vapor. So you will reach that condensation point or the dew point to collect more water, then you'll increase the sensible heat. So to put that in more layman terms, you go into a humid place, you turn on the AC, the same AC, one in a dry place and one in a humid place. The AC in the humid location will require more work to be able to remove all that humidity, then increase the temperature. And that's why people always prefer dry heat than humid heat. Beside the point of that humid heat allow you to evaporate your sweat more. And we talked about that earlier as well. So AC energy use, this has been changing, and this figure is from actually maybe 10 years old, but it's still very viable, and it depends also on the region. In the north side of the country, we require less air conditioning than the south, but we have other problems when it comes to heating and cooling. Heat is very, very high in the winter time, so we spend most of our budget and power heating the house than cooling. And up until recently, there were less demand on cooling. And for new houses, if you design the house well, meaning that you pick the right shades and the right windows, probably you can survive the summer without having to install an air conditioner unit. Except if the temperature is in the 90s, which doesn't happen that often. But we've been facing hotter summers every year. Every summer is hotter than the other. So again, the need for having an AC is there. And for people who already have a duct system, it will be a good idea to install a cooling unit along with your hot air system. Okay, moving along here. So in this schematic or this picture, you see how the sun hits the house in the winter and summer. So this is a very good illustration to show you where do you want to put your windows. If you're in the north hemisphere of the earth, the sun was always going to be in the south side of the house. So in the summertime, yes, the sun will be a little bit closer to the house, but again, it will hit you mostly in the south. So look at the sun rotation here. It's going through the south, and in the winter, the sun is a little bit further, but again, it's in the south side, and in the spring, again, it goes a little bit in the middle, but most of the time, the sun will hit the house from the east and from the south. The sun is going to be always south of the house. So if you look here, you see that the windows are located in the north. So in the north, you will get sunlight, but you do not get direct sun rays because it's hitting from the back and you get the shade. So you want your windows to be in the north side and the west. Why west? Because having your windows in the west in the summertime will give you less cooling. And some people also want to have some windows in the east. That means that your house will be heated more likely in the winter from these windows. So north side is where you want to have maximum windows, and the south, if you have windows, you want to have your shade. So, and east and west windows are also going to help out. But if you look at the sun location here, it's going to be mostly heading from the east side and a little bit further from the west side. So the sun in the west is very much cooler. So you want to have your windows on the west side and the north side for the solar radiation. But again, you can use that to your advantage. You can have your door, a glass door, a big window on the east side, and that will uh, help you heat the house in the winter from those glass windows only. So summer heat composed of many things. If we would like to think about summer heat, probably this is a problem that is new and we did not think about it a lot, but now we're getting hotter summer, so we want to try to think of ideas on how to counteract that effectively. So first of all, you have the air temperature. The air temperature is going to be hotter than usual. And you also have radiant temperature. This is from the solar rays. So the sun hits the house and it will heat the walls, it will heat the windows as well. And also you have humidity. Since we have hot days, the temperature will be above the dew point, will evaporate more heat. So the air is more humid, which is not very helpful when it comes to cooling. It will make you feel hotter. It will also cost you more energy to cool the house and take out all that heat. We also have the air movement, which is another issue. How does the air move? The wind, the breeze, those things do affect your heating and cooling. So I think I have an illustration here. This is a picture of somebody in the summertime playing tennis, for example, doing some exercise. So what is the heat coming from? This is radiation heat. The guy is hot, a lot of heat coming out of his body. You're trying to evaporate your sweat. If the humidity is above 80 already, or like 60%, sorry, then you're not going to be able to evaporate sweat, and the sweat will just remain on your body and make you hotter. You're also using convection. The hot air around your body will heat and rise as well. So that's what makes summer heat very uncomfortable, is like there's a lot of radiation under the sun, there's a lot of evaporation from your body, and there's a lot of convection happening. So again, makes you wonder a little bit about clothing in the summertime. Do I really want to wear short sleeve and shorts and have the sun heat my skin? Well, if you're in the shade, short sleeve and short pants will help you kind of not get the sun rays on your body, but you can also exchange the air better. But if you're going to be in the sun, you're better off wearing light clothes that will protect you from the sun or be under the shade and have the evaporation, have the air convection cool you. So think of the radiation and think of the sweat evaporation and also convection. So all in all, it's always going to be a little bit cooler under the shade, and you want to have a mean to evaporate the sweat if it's possible. Having also a fan will push the air away. So if you have a fan or wind or breeze, that will push all that air away from your body and speed up the convection heat transfer. Heat gain again in a house comes from solar heat. The sun is hitting your house, it's heating the walls, it's heating the windows, it's coming inside. And we also have internal heat that what we talked about in terms of appliances and light. We also have air leakage, again, our old friend, infiltration and exfiltration. So hot air will leak into your house as well, and you might have the cold air inside that you're trying to make escaping your house. So heat gain. Um, Transmission is the heat you are going to gain through transmission. Probably your attic area is going to be super hot, your roof is going to be hot, and this heat will transmit into your house. So this will make us think about insulation again. It's for both ways, inside and outside. And also you would like to cut off all the infiltration, air leakage, and the means where the air get into your house. And also you want to reduce the amount of humidity inside your house. So think of humidity, think of air temperature. All in all, you want to leave your temperature between 65 and 80, and you want the humidity to be between 40 and 60%. Other heat gain components, solar gains from the windows is the highest. The roof gets a lot of the sun, and most of the roofs here in New England are dark colors. That really helps a lot in the winter time because it will absorb the heat and it will help you melt the snow from the roof. But again, in the summertime, that will heat your roof significantly. So it will be very useful for you to have good insulating layer in the top of the roof. The walls, again, get a lot of sun radiation and they get heated. And if you don't have enough insulation, that will actually get hot, especially in the south side of the house or east and west. Internal heat, there's the production of heat from your fridge, from your appliances, and also from humidity. The more people you have in the house, the more humidity you will expel. I mean, just as you breathe, you're making. I mean, every breath you expel has a lot of humidity in it. We expel around almost half a gallon of water by just breathing. So think about how much humidity you're expelling into the house. Air leakage for heat and humidity, that's another contribution. And the temperature difference between inside and outside. So that all goes back into the equation, Q equal area times U times delta T. Moving on, reflectivity. What do we mean by reflectivity? Again, since we said like a lot of heat gain comes from sun, and the sun has a lot of rays that being sent to us. If we can reflect the infrared, we did a good job. And if we look again for inside the thermos or a good winter jacket or a ski jacket, there's a reflective side in it. This is to reflect all the infrared and not allow that rays to go through. And it just looks like a reflective surface or mirror. So it can help us in the windows, whether putting a film or tent or curtains or through the roof. If you can have dark color that will reflect the sun rays and absorb uh, the heat. I mean, it's going to absorb the heat anyway. And I'm thinking, as I'm talking about that, I'm thinking about the PV, the photovoltaic solar panels. The dark color, they're absorbing a lot of heat, they're absorbing a lot of sun rays, but it is converting that into electricity. And again, the heat actually is working the other way around. So again, it's kind of trying to find the balance between dark color that absorb solar rays but also absorbing heat. If we can absorb only solar rays and shut off the infrared, we'll did a great job. And some of the best photovoltaic cells that have a layer glass that will block out all the infrared and take in all the uh, solar rays in. Walls, they do the same thing. Think of all those big high-rise buildings in New York City or Boston. That are full of glass. It looks pretty. It looks nice. It's attractive. It's good decorative design. But again, we have to think about the solar gain. Most of this glass is double glass, and it's made in a way that will reflect all the heating solar rays, which is what we're looking for. Colors, again, between dark and bright. Dark colors absorb a lot of radiation, and bright colors reflect. And again, going back to clothing in the summertime, You see a lot of people in the south of Spain or Italy, they wear linen white fabric in the summertime covering the entire body because it's very sunny in there. So you want to reflect that sun rays and it having absorbed into your skin. Not to mention also the danger of ultraviolet rays. Landscaping. So landscaping does help us in the reduction of solar rays by a factor of 15 to 50%. And it's again has to do with the evapotranspiration, which is, I don't know if I'm even saying this correctly, but how it's when the plants absorb water and evaporate the excess humid water as vapor from the leaves. And as we talked before about latent heat, whenever you evaporate water, you are absorbing heat. So this is happening with the plants. So if you have grass, if you have trees, it will be very beneficial for you to in the summertime because it will cool your house and the area around you. So air temperature is reduced by 9 degrees Fahrenheit under a tree in the shade by itself, but under a tree is 25 degrees difference. So that is significant. So the shade is 25 degrees cooler than air above the tree. That gives you an idea that trees and grass do cool the air better. That's why it feels a little bit better when you're on the golf course in the summertime. It feels much cooler than being in the street or pavement or inside the city or downtown. Excuse me. So south and west tree location are best because you want to mitigate that solar rays. Again, you want the windows to be in the north and east, and you want to have some shade in the west and south. And again, between east and west, it always depends on what you want to do and what kind of windows do you have. So shading for windows has to do with direction. So you want to shade the window. I'm talking about awning here. And again, the goal is to get some visible light, but also kind of intercept the solar rays. So natural shade from trees is very desirable. It's good to have tall trees to give you shade and give you cool air and also block the heat, but you still have a view. The surface area of the window is again another issue. If you have a big glass area, this is a lot of sun rays coming into your house. Sunscreen, I'm not talking about the sunscreen you wear on your body. There's something similar that it comes in a form of a film that you can put on your windows. You can film those windows to block most of the infrared. And a lot of new windows come with this film already installed. There is a big significance of heat gain reduction when you put sunscreen films on it. Reflective films, it looks like a mirror. But again, the problem with reflective film is that um, it does reduce the visible light, which is not a very desirable trait. Here's the different types of shades that you can put on top of a window. And again, if you see, it's always around 45-degree angle. And shutters are another great idea to shut the window completely and cut off all the heat loss. But again, with shutters, you run into the problem that you lost the view, so you lost the window completely. But at least you have the ability to open and close the window. So these shutters are actually really cool because you can open it a little bit, then you can close completely, and some of them extend back and forth. I know it's a little bit pricey, but it's something in the long term. It gives you really pleasant ambient in the house and also cut off all the heat. Awning, and what options do we have when it comes to awning? It does intercept the heat before it goes into the window, which is a good idea. Hold on, sorry. That's the awning. It's not as good as investment as trees, especially for the view. Personally, if I can plant some good trees, I'll go with that because it will give me good shade. When you want to install awning, you should consider having it 45-degree angle. Internal shading, you can have drapes or curtains. They help a lot. But by that time, the heat is already inside the house. So it's good to have it from the outside, not the inside. Shutters are very useful for storm security and infiltration reduction, because a shutter is basically kind of a secondary wall that will shut off the air from going inside the house. So roofs, what can we do about roofs? Roofs are going to get a lot of solar rays all summer long in the daytime. So it's good to have a reflective roof if possible, but in this area most of the roofs are dark color. But there are some special shingles that are dark colors that will work in the winter for absorbing heat, but also they have insulation. So the heat, even if they get hot, they do not transmit that heat into the roof itself. So insulation is a very, very good idea. The attic, if it gets hot, it's really good to ventilate that attic. Sometimes just putting a vent in it, and from the top and a side vent will circulate the air, and the heat does not get into your house. Shading the roof with trees again is another idea, but we gotta be careful with that, especially with recently we're getting a lot of storms. You don't want the trees to fall into the house, and you don't want the size of tree that will cause damage to the wiring or uh, the structure of the house. So radiant barrier, craft paper, or reflective paper, those are really, again, good options to have on the roof. Internal heats, we never think about this type of heat. So people produce around 300 BTUs per hour of sensible heat and 150 flaring heat. That's an average of by person depending on the activity. Appliances, lights, cooking. Lights is not as a problem if you have LED. They're good for heat. Cooking ranges, housekeeping. Appliances like vacuums, they do produce a lot of heat. We can also limit the use of hot water. If we heat water and keep it hot for a long time, having hot tanks, probably it will emit that heat back into the house. So that's something that we don't want to have. All in all, you want to reduce the amount of stored hot water, because storing hot water is basically you are keeping heat for a while and you're going to lose this heat into the house at some point. So it's better to use on-demand hot waters or appliances with water heaters included in them. It's good to have exhaust fans to remove the moisture, especially in the bathroom and kitchen, and try to circulate the air instead of getting that heat all and humidity all over the house. Consider cooking at night as well. That's another advantage. If you're in the daytime when it's really hot and you have the AC on high and you're trying to cook, all the heat that's coming from your stove is actually going to the house and you emit a lot of heat. So maybe it's better to cook in the evening when it's cooler or in a good ventilated place. And this is one of the problems I see in all of those complex buildings when there is no exhaust for the stove. So if you cook anything, the heat will be all over the house. And again, think of ventilation as another good options for balancing the air inside the house. Again, humidity. Humidity is another issue. It can lead to that sticky and comfortable feeling, and also it will take you a while to cool the house if it's full of water vapor. And consider using a dehumidifier. What is a dehumidifier? It's basically an AC that collects the water vapor and dump it outside. So if you have an AC, probably you have a dehumidifier. And the humidifier is just an AC that's indoor, has a bucket, all the water will go into a bucket, or sometimes to a condensation pump that dump it outside. So it's the same mechanism, it's just different temperature. And again, it will cost you a lot of money to run this equipment. Transmission, we did talk about transmission a lot. It's the same equation, and only this time that the temperature is different. So the temperature difference in the summertime, I'm talking about maybe New England here, it's around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. In the winter, it's a little bit higher. And again, it depends on the location and what is your design temperature inside and what is the temperature outside. So for the summertime, we do design for the hottest day of the year. And probably in New England, you will design around like 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you want to keep the house around 75, that will be around 35 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. In the winter time, it's more degrees to heat the house. We can go as the coldest day can be 0, and you want to heat the house 70, so that's 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So ventilation, it has the potential to lower the cooling cost significantly, especially if the temperature outside the house is cooler than inside the house, right? So if your house is storing heat all day, it's going to need to lose that heat. But if you have proper ventilation, you will help the house lose the heat and exchange the air quicker. It works better with shaded trees again because they cool the air better, and it works again much better for low humidity. So if you live in Arizona or in a place that is dry, cooling the house will be way much better, much easier in the night than living in a house in Florida because the air outside is already hot and humid, and there's no point of ventilating the house because you're letting humidity in. Top floor windows are very important because if you open the windows in the second floor, and you have windows or vent in the bottom floor, you can have a chimney effect where the hot air will rise and escape the house, and cool air will coming from the ground level and cool the house. It's called the volute effect. So basically, you have a vent here, and the air will go up. I think I have a schematic for that. Yeah. If we look at that whole house fan, that's a very, very interesting design where you have a big fan that pull air from the entire house inside, and you have vents, and this fan will reject the air outside and will pull in all the hot air that is rising from the inside through these vents. That will cool the house much quicker and also help you get rid of all the humidity inside the house once the sun has set and the humidity is lower. Natural ventilation is great because it's free. You don't have to use a fan. You can just open vents, and again, you're using the air buoyancy and the physics of air to your advantage. And this is called also the chimney effect, where you have a volute and you get the air rising and escaping through the house through the vent in the top. So this is a picture of a house in Kenya, and it gets really hot in there during the day. If you notice, there's few little tricks here. There's a vent in the top that let all the hot air goes in, and this material is mud, which takes a long time to heat. So during the day, it doesn't get hot, and whatever heat it absorbs, it will reject during the night to keep the hot a little bit cool. And if you notice, also the house is a little bit below ground. And probably if you live in New England and you have a house below ground, I mean, if you have a basement, the basement is always cool during the summertime. So if you go deeper in ground, around like 10 meters, which is 30 feet, temperature is always constant. So the deeper you go, the less susceptible you are to sun rays and those heat issues. So look at that. And also, uh, this hay roof is also very insulating. So even the sun hits it, doesn't get hot, and it has a lot of porosity in it, so it's counteract the rain and the airflow, but it also breathes a little bit better than solid wall. This is another illustration for houses in Africa as well, and you can notice the design and the colors and the whole volute utilization, the whole volute air utilization in this house. So the air will go through the vent and go outside, and the dome shape helps speed up the flow going through that little structure. Air movement, what do fans do? They cool the body, not the air. The air is not going to lose temperature, but moving the air through your body makes you feel a little bit better. However, if it's really humid, the fan is not going to do much to you. If it's humid, you basically is going to feel a little bit better, but you're still going to be uncomfortable, and your body is not going to lose heat. So there's something called evaporative coolers, where also known as chillers, where you can just evaporate water and use that sensible heat or latent heat to cool the liquid inside. So chillers are very common in big buildings. They use water, sometimes ammonia, They're very effective, and basically they only operate on the concept of evaporating water. Also, in some cultures, they have some kind of structures that have curtains that get wet and get evaporated during the night. And once you wet those shades or curtains, and they evaporate the water, the temperature will cool off a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit. Geothermal chillers, they do the same concept, which is exchanging temperature using water. And the idea is, as I said before, that if you go below ground by 10 meters, which is 30 feet, the temperature is always constant. So you can dig a well and keep circulating the water through it to cool your house. So the temperature, I think, in here is going to be always in New England 50 degrees, constant all year round. And that is at 30. Hold on. Oh, what happened here? Yeah, sorry about that. So if you go down the ground level by 30 feet, 30 feet, you will get a constant temperature of 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can circulate water in and out, or air as well, to cool the house just using geothermal. Air conditioners, they use the second law of thermodynamics again. We did say heat moves from hot to cold, and if you wanted to do the opposite, you have to put equal amount of work. So what we basically is doing is using the refrigeration cycle and trying to pump heat from inside the house to outside. So we're going against nature. We're pumping heat from a cold place to a hot place. Because if we look at the house, if it's 80 inside and 80 here, and outside it's 90. We're trying to pump heat from 80 to 90. That's against nature, against physics. So to do this kind of work, you have to put in equal work and pump that heat out. And we use the refrigerant as our heat transfer fluid to pump that heat out using compression and expansion. And probably when you take the fundamental air conditioning, you'll go through that process and learn how does it work and how does it do that. So basically we do superheating and subcooling for the refrigerant and try to exchange heat based on its an evaporator or condenser based on the surrounding temperature and the coil. So there's something called the coefficient of performance, which is the BTU removed over the watts we put in. So this is what the unit is doing, and this is how much watt we use for the compressor to pump in heat. So the compressor does a lot of work by compressing the gas, and that requires us to have a motor. The motor requires us to run on electricity. That's watts. So how much of the compression do we have in relation to how much BTU we removed? Different types of cooling, window ACs, central ACs, heat pumps or mini splits, which is ductless, also known as ductless central air. Those things are called VRF, variable refrigerant flow. So what they do is basically they reverse the cycle in the summertime and the wintertime. It's also called as a heat pump, and it can have variable multi-stage compression, so we can absorb more heat from the outside even at 10 degrees Fahrenheit. But again, the efficiency does go lower and lower as the temperature outside drops. This is an illustration about geothermal that we talked about, how we can use geothermal to subsidize some of the heating and cooling loads inside the house. In the wintertime, we can pump in cold water and get some relatively hotter water or air from the ground. Again, the deeper we go, the better. And probably you've seen a lot of companies around this area that do install geothermal systems in a house. However, it gets a little bit more expensive as we have a lot of rocky soil in here. Chillers, this is the concept of chillers and how things work and when we evaporate air and liquid and absorb the heat and put it back into a reservoir of water. Passive cooling of a house, how it works with the wind. And here's some video about home passive cooling if you would like to learn more about that system. Okay, that's all I have for you. Please watch the video. Try to keep it as concise as possible and check out the book for more information about cooling. Thank you.